What do you say to people who, when they hear about a fatherhood program, they say that it is a distraction from their core mission? If in the context of a pregnancy help center, whose
Yeah.
mission is saving lives from abortion. Not all of them are. Some are resource centers. God
Yeah.
bless them too. But others are more so intervention centers. Their explicit goal is to save lives from abortion.
Yeah.
So some of those directors, I've heard them say that a men's ministry is a distraction, or we can't do it all. I think Scott Klusendorf wrote a piece or
Yep.
something about how men's ministries are. It's kind of like an unfair burden that you're placing on pregnancy centers that they can't just be in the business of helping women. They also have to do this other stuff. I don't know what the main thesis was, but
Yeah.
what is your response to
So
that?
so I think that I think that there's a couple of things there. Number one, clarity of goals and objectives, right? What is the goal of the pregnancy center? Because what I've learned is, and I know you know this, is that you kind of just touched on this, that not all pregnancy centers have the same mission, right? So to your question, which is for the pregnancy centers whose mission is to save babies, all right. Um, my initial response is, 97% of men who see an ultrasound and go through a fatherhood program choose life. I've heard varying numbers, but never consistently have I heard numbers that are that high for women who see an ultrasound. I've heard people say 100% of the people who see women who see an ultrasound choose life. That's just not a true statement.
No,
I've heard numbers that are closer to 90, 93, which are probably more accurate. Um,
it's lower.
but is it lower?
It's lower, so it's
Okay.
they say 80 to 90%, but that's of all women, which is probably
Yeah.
the same stat, it's all men. When you
Yeah.
drill down to abortion-minded, it's lower, which the
Right.
jury's actually out on that. People don't have good stats on it, but yeah, it's definitely lower for women.
Right. And so and so look, and that's a really good point. You bring up all women, and many of the women want the baby, right? And so that's going to skew the numbers. And that can apply to my statistic as well, because you're talking about two things. You're talking about, number one, a man who is willing to go with mom to the pregnancy center to see the ultrasound, right? And is willing to come back. Okay. And so that's a big deal. But from the perspective of what can we control, right? And we can only control what we can control. Who calls and what their perspective is on the moment they call is not something we can control, right? We can control how that conversation goes on our end as we try to get mom and dad into the center to see the ultrasound. We can control what happens when we meet with them and whether or not we are doing the best that we can do to get dad, from my perspective, back for a fatherhood program. Those are the only things we can control. And so looking at it from a business standpoint, and again, I know I've said this before, and I think people get really hung up on sales, right? It gets this bad rap, but we're in business. Like the pregnancy centers, even though they're nonprofits, they are in the business of saving babies. There are KPIs, right? Key performance indicators. There are numbers, metrics that we can use to see how effective we are, and they know this because they read them off at their fundraising banquets, right? So then the question becomes, like, what are we looking at? And if we can control and do the very best we can to convince mom to bring dad, and for some people, they got to get out of this hang up that dad's the reason mom's getting an abortion. Does that happen sometimes? Yes. Villainizing men, so that you can better serve women, like, that is third wave feminism at its worst, and is something that we in the pro-life movement should not be taking a part of.
I have seen that. I have
Yeah.
seen that. What
People
are
tell me all the time. They're like, "Well, no, we don't invite the man because he's the reason she's getting an abortion." That I will tell you, as a man who fought for the life of my child, that is not an accurate way to look at things. And look, I'm going to go off on a sidebar here because I think this is really important. All right, 54% of men in America identify as pro-life. That's based on a Gallup poll from June of 2025. 54% of men in America identify as pro-life. Only 38% of women in that same poll identify as pro-life. Okay. So what that tells us is that based on that poll, men identify as pro-life at about 20 points higher than women. Okay. So the idea then that men are the driving force behind all abortions is nonsensical. But let's continue down that path. So in addition to that, we can look at an NBC poll from around that same time, sometime last year, and I think it was the end of last year. This NBC poll, what it did was it gave 13 indicators of success. Okay. And then it separated it by gender, it separated it by political leaning, conservative or liberal, and it separated it by age. All right. So if we look at men in this poll, 18 to 29, that's the age group that are going to be coming into pregnancy centers, right? So if we look at 18 to 29-year-old men who are conservative, out of a list of 13 different things as the number one indicator of success, they chose children. All right. Women who are conservative chose children as number 4 or 6. I don't remember that offhand. So, but significantly lower than where young men chose it. Now, look at the liberal men and women in that same age group. Same thing. Young men, not number 1, but they chose it at a significantly higher rate than the young women. Young women in the liberal 18 to 29 chose children as number 12. The
It was
only
dead
thing that
last.
they thought, social media influencer.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was,
The only thing they wanted less. And I'm going to be honest with you when I tell you that that's probably a lie. Like some of those liberal young women wanted to be a social media influencer, but they didn't feel comfortable saying that as a key indicator of success.
I saw that stat and that just made me think, one, it was really depressing, but two, this can't go on. I mean, if liberal women rank having children at the bottom of the list of attributes of success, right?
Right.
Uh, they're not going to be having children, and who's going to come after them? And so, is that ideology dying or is it growing, in your opinion?
Well, I think that the liberal ideology is dying out. And I'll get to that in a minute. But to continue down this line, right? Where we say where because what I want to just make sure that I'm sticking to this false narrative that men are the driving force behind all abortions, right? Men see children as more valuable than women do. Men are more pro-life in America than women are. And if you say, yeah, but the liberal young men don't view children as number 1, that's fair. Okay. But another poll from looking at that same age group, 18 to 29, men from 2020 to 2024, noted a 7-point shift from the left, from liberal ideology to the right. Okay. And now we have this study that came out last week that shows that 42% of young men say that church and religion is important to them, which is 14% higher than the year before, like 14% higher than 1 year before. Okay. All of that combined, this is what I believe. I believe that young men have been lied to their entire lives. They're being lied to by the left. They're being lied to about family. They're being lied to about secularism. And they are leaving the lies and seeking the truth. They are leaving the left. They are seeking the right. They are leaving secular world. They are moving to the church. And they are valuing the things that are naturally, biologically more important to us. God has ordained us as men to be the heads of our family. We can't be the head of our family if there is no family. Like we can't sustain this, to the point you just made. We can't sustain a society if we're not having kids, right? They're leaving the lies of abortion isn't murder. They're leaving the lies of it's just a clump of cells, because it just doesn't make sense. And they're tired of being lied to. And they're moving to the truth that abortion kills babies. They're moving to the truth that that abortion is wrong. They're leaving the lies that boys can be girls. And I think that's probably what set everybody off. Like there is a point where you get so absurd in your ideology that you are telling people number one, that boys can become girls. Boys know they can't become girls. Like that's just ridiculous. And they don't want to be told they can become girls. They're tired of being told that they are the problem, and they want to find the truth. And so all of that to say that these young men, and look, there's bad actors, right? There are men who are abusive. There are men who will use abortion as a tool of abuse and manipulation. 100%. But I do not believe that there is any evidence that that is the norm or the majority. And I think that pregnancy centers need to get out of that and recognize that we know that the father is the number one influence in the mom's decision to choose life. And if we are not meeting him, then we are failing to save that child.